The SUV didn't slow down. Ingrid Solano heard the engine first, a low, surgical roar cutting through the sleet that had been needling her face for the last 11 blocks. She pressed herself against the cold brick of a shuttered pharmacy on Broad Street and waited for the impact. Waited for headlights. Waited for the kind of ending Clifton Parish had been promising her for the better part of 3 hours. The impact didn't come. The passenger window slid down instead. A man leaned out, not Clifton, not one of Clifton's off-duty detectives, and pressed a clean white cloth against her hairline before she could flinch away. The pressure was firm, practiced. "How long has he been doing this to you?" he asked. Ingrid hadn't cried yet. She hadn't had time. She was going to cry now. She could feel it building behind her eyes like pressure behind a dam, and she absolutely refused to do it in front of a stranger in a car she didn't recognize on a street where every security camera was owned by the city of Philadelphia. A city currently run, in every practical sense, by Deputy Commissioner Clifton Parish. She said nothing. The man pulled the cloth back, looked at it, looked at her. "Get in the car, Miss Solano," he said quietly, "or stand here and bleed on the sidewalk until his people find you. Your choice." 3 hours earlier, the choice had been simpler. She had been sitting at the kitchen table of the Rittenhouse apartment Clifton had paid for, his name on the lease, his art on the walls, his version of generosity that had felt like love for exactly 14 months before she understood it for what it was, staring at the spreadsheet she had been building in secret for the past 6 weeks. She had her own laptop, her own encrypted drive. She had taken every precaution she could think of. She had not taken enough. Ingrid was a forensic data analyst for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. Her official job was to audit contract awards and flag irregularities for the Inspector General's office. Her unofficial job, as Clifton had explained to her on their third date with a smile she had mistaken for honesty, was to be the most competent person in the building and let him take credit for it. For 2 years, she had been very good at the unofficial job. She was 29 years old, wide-hipped and soft-shouldered, the kind of woman who bought her blazers 2 sizes up to accommodate her chest, and then stood in the elevator trying to make herself smaller when the senior staff got on. Clifton had told her she was invisible in the best way. A woman like her, he'd said once, tilting his head as if offering a compliment, doesn't draw attention. That's your advantage. She had believed him. She had stopped believing him 6 weeks ago when the numbers stopped adding up. $4,300,000 distributed across 11 ghost vendor accounts over 18 months, all of them authorized with her login credentials and her digital signature. She had never seen those contracts. She had never signed those approvals. But the audit trail led straight to her desk, her computer, her keycard access at 11 p.m. on nights she had been asleep in the apartment 2 floors above Clifton's office. She had confronted him calmly. She had the spreadsheet open. She had the timestamps. He had looked at the screen for a long moment. Then he had closed her laptop with one hand and hit her with the other. He was not a physically large man, wiry, tailored, the kind of slim that read as discipline in rooms full of people who admired discipline, but he had weight behind the first hit, and he had something worse behind the second, absolute certainty that no one would believe her. A fat, overpromoted data jockey from South Philly, he said, standing over her on the kitchen floor, his voice perfectly even, against a deputy commissioner with 30 years in city government and 2 successful mayoral campaigns under his belt. She should think about what that looks like. She should think very carefully. She had thought about it while pressing a dish towel to her split lip. She had thought about it while he made a phone call in the next room, his voice dropping to the murmur she now recognized as the one he used when he was talking to people who owed him favors. She had thought about it while she pulled on her coat and walked out the service entrance while he was still talking. She had her encrypted drive. She had her phone, cracked at the corner from hitting the kitchen tile. She had $11 in her coat pocket, and nowhere in the city of Philadelphia that Clifton Parrish did not have eyes. She had been walking south on Broad Street for 40 minutes in the sleet when the SUVs found her. His name was Tobias Renner. She knew the name the way she knew about weather systems and structural failures, abstractly, as a category of thing that existed in the world and could cause damage. The Renner Group was a Philadelphia institution, privately held, fingers in commercial real estate and port logistics, and 3 union pension funds. Tobias Renner was photographed at galas, known to mayors and city councilmen and federal judges the way that men with serious money are always known, officially and carefully. He was also, according to the things people said quietly in parking garages, and never in print, the man who decided which port shipments moved and which ones stayed on the dock. He sat across from her in the back of the SUV now, charcoal overcoat, white shirt open at the collar, dark eyes that caught the passing streetlights with an unsettling patience. He had taken the cloth back and handed it to someone in the front seat. He was looking at her the way no one had looked at her in a very long time, like she was a problem he intended to solve. "You didn't take my money," he said. Not a question. Ingrid pressed her back against the leather. "I don't know what you're talking about." $4.3 million moved through 11 shell vendors over 18 months, all of it routed through a municipal contract pipeline I've been using as a legitimate wash account for my construction subsidiaries. He paused. "I know what a ghost vendor looks like, Miss Solano. The woman who built that audit trail had access and motive, and not a single personal transaction over $40,000 in the last 3 years. She also cried in the parking garage on Tuesday and again on Thursday." Ingrid went very still. "I had someone watching the building," Tobias said. He didn't apologize for it. "I've been watching Clifton Parrish for 4 months. I needed the full financial picture before I moved. Exposing him prematurely would have given him time to destroy the source documents and disappear into the political infrastructure protecting him. I was waiting for the right moment." He held her gaze directly. "I waited too long. That's on me." The admission landed in the car like something physical. "You were watching me work," she said finally. "I was watching you find my money." He tilted his head slightly. "You found it faster than my own people did. That's worth paying attention to. And what do you want from me now?" He leaned forward. The interior of the car smelled of cedar and cold air, and something expensive she couldn't name. He looked at the bruise developing along her jawline. She could feel it. Could feel the specific heat of it, the way it pulsed, and something shifted in his expression. Not softness exactly, something more precise than that. "I want to know how long Clifton Parrish has been hitting you," he said. Not coldly, not clinically, like the answer was something he intended to take seriously. Ingrid looked at her hands. 6 weeks, she said finally, since I started asking questions. Tobias was quiet for a moment. "Marcus," he said to the front seat, "tell Dr. Halvorson we're coming in, and put a car on Clifton Parrish. I want to know where he is every hour until I say otherwise." She woke up in a room with 12-foot ceilings and a fireplace and curtains so heavy they blocked the sound of the city entirely. Dr. Halvorson, a slight man, 60s, who moved with the economy of someone who had seen genuine emergencies and did not dramatize them, told her she had a cracked collarbone, bruised ribs on the left side and a mild concussion. He wrapped her shoulder. He gave her medication. He told her to sleep, and she did, because her body had apparently made that decision without consulting her. When she woke again, Tobias was standing at the window. He had changed out of the overcoat. Dark cashmere, dark trousers, the kind of simple that costs more than it looks. He didn't turn around immediately. He was looking out at a garden she couldn't quite see, grey morning light falling across the side of his face. "Where am I?" she asked. "Chestnut Hill," he turned, "my house. You'll stay here until we deal with Parrish." "I can't stay here." She tried to sit up and the collarbone reminded her sharply of its opinion. She stopped. She had an apartment she couldn't go back to. She had a job under a man who wanted her dead. She had an encrypted drive with $4.3 million of evidence and nowhere safe to open it. "You have nowhere to go," Tobias said. "Not unkindly, and I have a guest suite." She looked at him. "Why are you doing this?" He pulled a chair from the corner and sat down. It was a deliberate thing. He moved like a man who made deliberate choices, and he sat close enough that she could see his face clearly in the grey light. "Clifton Parish has been embezzling from my operations for 1.5 years, Tobias said. "That's a problem I can resolve several ways. What I couldn't resolve 4 months ago was why. Parish makes $200,000 a year. He didn't need $4 million. He paused, until I understood that he does in fact need it. Very badly. And for a reason that concerns me considerably more than the money itself." Ingrid said nothing. She waited. "The money isn't sitting in an account somewhere," Tobias continued. "You're going to find that out when you look. Parish isn't keeping it. He's moving it." She felt the analyst part of her brain wake up despite everything. To where? "That's what I need you to find." He met her eyes steadily. "Senator Raymond Alt is running for governor on a law and order platform. Part of that platform involves dismantling what his campaign materials call corrupt port union influence, which, translated into plain English, means my business operations. He is going to win unless something changes. And I believe Clifton Parish is the reason he's going to win." Ingrid thought about the timestamps on those contracts, the specific pattern of the ghost vendors. Not random, not sloppy, designed to look like her, designed to look precisely like how she worked. "He's been building a frame around me for 18 months, she said slowly. "Yes." "So when the Inspector General eventually finds the trail, it leads to a data analyst who was sleeping with the Deputy Commissioner and had full system access and no obvious alibi for any of it." Tobias held her gaze. He was thorough. "He told me nobody would believe me." "He was probably right," Tobias said, "about every person in that city whose cooperation he has purchased. He was wrong about me." He stood. "A woman, you are not a scapegoat, Miss the System. Alone, using nothing but her own intelligence while a man actively used her credentials against her. That woman is the sharpest forensic mind I have encountered in 20 years of needing forensic minds." Ingrid looked at the fireplace for a moment. "He told me I was invisible," she said quietly. "He said it like it was a gift. He said it because it was useful to him." Tobias's voice didn't soften artificially, it just carried. "I watched you eat lunch at your desk for 6 months because he'd convinced you that you were too much for any room. I watched you wear the same grey blazer 3 days a week because he'd told you the dark colors were more appropriate. I watched you make yourself smaller, incrementally, month by month, until you were exactly the size he needed you to be." He picked up his jacket from the arm of the chair. "You found $4 million alone, and then you walked 11 blocks in sleet with a cracked collarbone to survive him." He looked at her directly. "There is nothing small about you, not one single thing." She didn't cry until after he left the room. They gave her a laptop, a clean one, encrypted, with secure access to whatever she asked for. She worked for 3 days. Her shoulder ached in a specific grinding way that she had begun to anticipate and work around. The medication helped. The focus helped more. For the first time in 2 years, she felt the clean, forward pull of a problem that was entirely hers to solve. No one standing over her shoulder to take the result and put his name on it. Tobias came into the library in the evenings and sat in the leather chair across from her desk. He didn't offer suggestions. He didn't hover. He read or worked on his own phone, or sometimes sat with a glass of bourbon and the fireplace going, and the quality of his silence was different from Clifton's silence. Clifton's silence had always been an evaluation. Tobias's silence was simply presence, like a wall you could put your back against. On the second evening, she forgot herself and ate dinner at the desk. Real dinner, not something she would have permitted herself in front of Clifton, who had strong opinions about portion sizes and liked to mention them at mealtimes. Someone brought a full plate from the kitchen without being asked, set it beside her keyboard without comment, and left. She ate without apologizing for it. It took her a full minute to notice she'd done it. On the third morning, she found what she was looking for. "It's not a campaign contribution," she said. Tobias put down his coffee. "It's cleaner than that." Parrish moved the money into a 501 CEF4, a dark money non-profit called the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Alliance. The non-profit funds issue advocacy. The issue advocacy funds ad buys in every swing district in the state, all of them framing Alt's opposition as corrupted by criminal elements. She turned the laptop around. But the non-profit also carries a restricted fund, discretionary, directed by a 3-person advisory board. The 3 members are Clifton Parrish, a Shell LLC registered in Delaware, and Raymond Alt's brother-in-law. Tobias stared at the screen for a long, silent moment. "He's not just buying Alt a governorship," he said. "He's buying himself a partner in the governor's mansion," Ingrid finished. "If Alt wins, Parrish walks into whatever position he wants. And Alt has a governor's budget to play with and no one asking where the Philadelphia contract money went, because the Inspector General's office will report to him. And I'm still the loose end with 18 months of falsified records attached to my credentials." Tobias stood. He came around the desk and looked at the screen from behind her, close enough that she was aware of the warmth of him, the stillness of him, the way he looked at the numbers, not like they frightened him, but like they confirmed what he had already suspected. "It's solid," he said quietly. "Every piece of it." "Every piece of it," she agreed. "The Pennsylvania Municipal Leadership Gala is Saturday night," he said, "at the Franklin Institute. Raymond Alt is giving the keynote. Clifton Parrish is on the host committee." Ingrid looked up at him. "I can't go to that." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "He'll have people there, and I don't." She gestured vaguely at herself. The oversized sweater, the shoulder brace under it. "I don't blend into those rooms, Tobias. I never have." He looked at her for a moment in a way that was neither pitying nor dismissive. "You're not going to blend," he said. "You're going to walk through the front door on my arm and let every person in that room understand before you say a single word that you are exactly where you choose to be." He picked up his phone from the desk. "My assistant will bring someone to handle wardrobe tomorrow morning. You focus on the data transfer. I need everything that can sync wirelessly to an external AV system." "I can do that." "I know you can." He moved toward the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. "Ingrid." She looked up. "What Clifton told you about being too much, too visible, simply by existing in the room?" He didn't soften his voice or round the edges. He just said it straight. "He told you that because a woman who walks into rooms and takes up her full amount of space is something he cannot control. He needed you small. That's not a description of you. That's a description of his limitations." He left. She sat with that for a long time, her hand resting on the laptop, the fire going quietly across the room. Then she got back to work. The Franklin Institute glittered on Saturday night. Every light in the building seemed to be on. The great rotunda, the glass facade, the steps where the city's best and most carefully photographed gathered in their winter formal best. Clifton Parrish was inside, she knew, near the front, working the room the way he always had, with that easy smile and the handshake that lasted exactly 2 beats longer than necessary to remind you who held more cards. He did not know she was alive. The car stopped at the base of the steps. She had not looked at herself clearly in 3 days. She looked now in the darkened glass of the car door, a woman in a deep burgundy gown, silk charmeuse that moved with her instead of against her, the neckline clean, and the cut deliberate around every curve of her actual body. Not concealing anything, not apologizing for anything. Her shoulder brace was gone. Dr. Halvorsen had cleared her that morning, barely, with firm instructions. Her hair was down, the collarbone bruise was still there, a watercolor of yellow and purple under her skin, and she wore nothing over it. Tobias offered his hand from outside the car. She took it and stood up. The air was cold and clear. She could see her breath. "Ready," he said. She looked at the top of the steps, at the lights inside. "Yes," she said. They walked up together. She heard the shift in the room before she saw it, the specific quality of attention moving, a sound like a held breath, the small adjustments of people who have noticed something unexpected and are recalibrating. She kept her eyes forward. She kept her shoulders back. It cost her. The collarbone had opinions about that particular posture, but she didn't let it show. She saw Clifton from across the rotunda. He saw her at the same moment. He went the color of chalk, his champagne glass tilted in his hand without spilling. She didn't rush. She crossed the room at a pace she chose, Tobias a half step behind her, not leading, and she stopped at the edge of the small knot of city officials surrounding the man who had stood over her on her kitchen floor and told her to think very carefully. "Clifton," she said. The name carried. The acoustics in the rotunda were excellent. He stared at her, his mouth moved. "You, how are you?" She reached into her clutch and removed a small remote transmitter. Around the room, the ornate screens meant for the evening's presentational materials flickered into life, every one of them. The data was clean, formatted for an audience who needed to understand something quickly and couldn't be assumed to have context, the kind of presentation she had always been good at, even when no one gave her credit for it: vendor names, account numbers, wire dates, the non-profit registration, the advisory board members, the ad-buy invoices, the $600,000 that had moved from the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Alliance, restricted fund into a personal account registered to Raymond Olt's brother-in-law in October, 8 weeks before the primary. A woman near the bar said very quietly, "Oh my God." Senator Olt was already moving toward the exit. He did not make it far. Clifton Parrish did not move at all. He was looking at the screens with the expression of a man watching a building fall and understanding bone-deep that he is inside it. His champagne glass dropped. It didn't shatter. The carpeting caught it, but it rolled, and the champagne spread, and nobody bent to pick it up. "Ingrid," Clifton said. His voice had lost everything except the fact of being sound. "Ingrid, please. I can fix this. It doesn't have to." "My name is Ingrid Solano," she said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I've been a forensic data analyst for the city of Philadelphia for 4 years. I have a master's degree in financial forensics from Temple University, and I am very, very good at my job." She looked at him steadily. "You used my credentials. You used my access. You used my face as a default signature for 18 months of fraud because you decided I was the right size for the role." She paused. "You decided I was disposable because you had convinced me of the same thing. That was your only real mistake." He took a step toward her. 2 of Tobias's people materialized at the edges of the room, unhurried. Clifton stopped. "I'm sorry," he said. The word sounded unfamiliar in his mouth, like something he hadn't practiced in years. "Ingrid, I was desperate. I didn't have a—" "You had every choice," she said. "You made all of them." She pressed the transmitter one final time. A federal evidence notification appeared on every screen, time-stamped 2 hours earlier, filed with the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. The room went the kind of quiet that has weight to it. Clifton Parrish sank to his knees. She didn't think it was intentional. His legs simply stopped cooperating. She turned away from him. Tobias was standing 3 feet behind her, hands in his overcoat pockets, watching. Not the screens, not the room. Her. The way he had been watching her, she understood now, for longer than she'd known. "Are you ready to go?" he asked quietly. She looked back at the rotunda one last time, the screens still glowing, the officials frozen in place, The man who had told her she was invisible now on both knees on the Franklin Institute floor. "Yes," she said. She took his arm, and they walked out the way they came in, through the front door, down the steps, into the clear Philadelphia night. She exhaled fully for what felt like the first time in 2 years. The cold air filled her lungs completely, without condition, without apology. The city spread out around her, the lights, the dark river a few blocks east, the sound of traffic on the parkway that had always been there and had never required her permission to exist. She had never needed anyone's permission for that either. She had just forgotten it for a while. "What happens now?" she asked. Tobias looked out at the street for a moment. "Now," he said, "you decide." For the first time in a very long time, that was exactly the right answer.